On December 24th, 2020, we suddenly learned that Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch had been sold. I think to many fans this was a shock, although we also know Michael never felt at home anymore at Neverland after the trial in 2005. In fact, he left the US shortly after the trial and never set foot at Neverland again. For him, it was tainted after being accused of sexually abusing children at his beloved home. Something no evidence ever was found on. Something that never happened. In the past years, Neverland came up in my videos a lot, and when I learned that Neverland was sold to Ron Burkle, I remembered there were other names connected to him when it came to Michael and to Neverland. So I went back to the research I did about Neverland a couple of years ago, and even found new information which I will share in this video. I started looking into Neverland working on my series about the 2005 trial. On December 3, 2004, the Santa Barbara police raided Neverland for the second time. They were mainly looking for DNA of the accuser, Gavin Arvizo, on Michael's bed. They also needed a sample of Michael's DNA, and he gave it to them voluntarily. After all, he had nothing to hide. But some people, like Professor Laurie Levinson, thought the timing right before the deadline of handing over the evidence was suspicious. The defense could even, if they wanted to, dismiss the new findings by saying it was done to plant evidence. And even people in Santa Barbara were wondering, even the ones who were acquainted with DA Tom Sneddon, why did it take the prosecution so long to do a second raid? And why did they do it at all? After the raid, the Santa Barbara press said some adult magazines were found at Neverland, and both Michael's and Gavin's fingerprints were on there. But Gavin and his brother, both teenagers, spent a lot of time at Neverland without Michael even being there. And it wouldn't be strange for a boy that age to peek into magazines like that. Also not so strange for a 46-year-old either. Michael's lawyers filed a motion on December 15, 2004 to dismiss the whole case. They said the last raid at Neverland was unnecessary and only done to intimidate their client. And if the prosecution felt they still had to do a raid, they were probably not prepared for the trial. The defense also argued they wouldn't have time to go through all of the new material seized, a staggering list of 22,000 pages. They said Michael was singled out and nobody had ever been treated like this.
Well, we've got the prosecutor caught in putting fingerprints of the child's fingerprints on a girly magazine.
Yes.
At the grand jury hearing. The magazine the boy said was exactly the magazine Michael gave him at Neverland Ranch, except the magazine hadn't been published yet when he was last at Neverland Ranch.
In the meantime, Michael planned a Christmas holiday party at Neverland for children and their families.
Hundreds of people have been enjoying Michael Jackson's hospitality today at Neverland Ranch, the very place where prosecutors say Jackson broke the law by molesting a boy.
Michelle, they came by the busload, dozens and dozens of children, by invitation only, from churches and church schools, from Compton to Santa Clarita to Santa Barbara, visitors to Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch, and their host was here to greet them. Michael Jackson personally welcomed some 200 kids to his Neverland Ranch today.
Welcome to Neverland. Hey! And Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you! And they did. The kids got to see animals in the Neverland Zoo, play games, and ride rides. Even as trial on child molestation charges looms for Jackson, parents bringing their children in this morning were not concerned.
You know, it's the chance of a lifetime. I'm here, to monitor what goes on. So, I just took them up on the offer.
I didn't really look at it like that. It's just exciting to be here. And the kids are excited. They love Michael Jackson. And they don't know about all that type of stuff.
So what do you know about Michael Jackson?
I know he's a singer and a dancer.
Yeah. No, I would leave all 5 of my kids here tonight. Michael is innocent.
We believe we like Michael. That allegation, it's just an allegation.
The media invited in as well and offered a train ride to the festivities for what a Jackson spokeswoman says is not an out-of-the-ordinary event at Neverland.
And at least 2 to 4 times a month, organizations are allowed to come here. And since this was the last one prior to the holidays, he decided he would surprise the kids by doing so, and they were very happy about that.
All these kids know is they're having a great time. Michael Jackson made it happen.
We love you, Michael! We love you.
We know that Neverland has always been the subject of controversy, from it being a too lavish home to the reclusive Michael, or to it being a pedophile's playground. Especially during the trial in 2005, the prosecution tried to turn Neverland into a grim and dangerous place. But Neverland never was any of that. It was home to Michael Jackson, who wanted a safe home, where he could be himself, and be safe from the always present tabloids and paparazzi. Being the most famous person on earth and never being able to go anywhere like the movies or an amusement park, this was the ultimate place for him to do all of that. He also invited lots of underprivileged children and their families to have a day of carefree fun.
We had a great time.
Really?
It was awesome.
Yes, it was awesome.
Thank you very much.
Are you putting this on TV?
No, it's for the boss,
Michael?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Michael, very much.
I just want to thank you for building this. It's really good. Oh, by the way, my phone number is...
You did. We had a wonderful time.
In 1993, Michael gave his now famous speech at Neverland after he had been strip searched by the Santa Barbara police, which was the most humiliating thing that ever happened to him.
As you may already know, after my tour ended, I remain out of the country undergoing treatment for a dependency on pain medication. I have been forced to submit to a dehumanizing and humiliating examination by the Santa Barbara County Sheriff Department and the Los Angeles Police Department earlier this week. It was a nightmare, a horrifying nightmare. But if this is what I have to endure to prove my innocence, my complete innocence, so be it. I am not guilty of these allegations, but if I am guilty of anything, it is of giving all that I have to give to help children all over the world.
Now let's go back to where this all started. On February 3rd, 2003, the documentary Living with Michael Jackson was broadcasted. Michael had opened up his home and heart to Martin Bashir, who vowed to make an honest portrait of Michael. But when it aired, it became clear Bashir turned it into a twisted and edited version, to make Michael look weird, unstable, and probably not a good parent either. He also made suggestions of suspicious behavior with children. Bashir told Michael off camera how he admired him and how awful it was people judged him so quickly. But in the version on TV, he had added a voiceover, in which he criticized Michael basically for everything. A very smart thing Michael did was, he let his own cameras roll too, and they captured a very different Bashir.
Some of Mr. Bashir's comments that made the air appear to be quite different than opinions he expressed in Jackson's behind-the-scenes footage.
About Michael's ranch, Mr. Bashir's on-air comment was, "One of the most disturbing things is the fact that a lot of disadvantaged children go to Neverland. It's a dangerous place for a vulnerable child to be." But what he said behind the scenes was this.
I was here yesterday and I saw it, and it's nothing short of a spiritually kind thing.
Mr. Bashir is quoted as saying, "Michael Jackson is a marvelous father to his own children, and I never saw anything that would qualify as a criminal activity." This comes from an interview dated just a few days ago. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Maury Povich. Good night.
Do you sometimes despair of human nature?
Yes. Yes, of course.
I mean, can you ever do anything that's right?
No. No. No matter what you do, there's always somebody that will say something about it. They're opinionated, you know? No matter what you do. No matter how good your intentions are, there's always some jerk, some mean-spirited person to try to bring you down. And all you wanted to do is bring some love and some joy, and that's all.
Even though Bashir spent months at Neverland with Michael and saw firsthand what an innocent and beautiful place it was, he still created a crushing documentary, one that would ignite the 2005 trial, which many believe led to his untimely death in 2009. After Michael died, Bashir would state on TV how he never saw anything inappropriate or criminal happening at Neverland. A little too late.
Certainly when I made the documentary, there was a small part of that which contained a controversy concerning his relationship with other young people. But the truth is that he was never convicted of any crime. I never saw any wrongdoing myself. And whilst his lifestyle may have been a bit unorthodox, I don't believe it was criminal. And I think the world has now lost the greatest entertainer it's probably ever known.
One of the witnesses at the 2005 trial was Aja Pryor, Chris Tucker's ex-wife and daughter of Richard Pryor. She became close to the Arvizo children when she accompanied them to Neverland. She talked about their friendship with them and what she witnessed at Neverland.
Well, when I first met the family, the accuser, he bragged about how Michael was his best friend and seemed like something that really brought a lot of joy to his life. The mom never seemed to come around until after he was better. And, and once he was better and we started to do other things, then the mom was around all the time and I never saw his father anymore. These kids were very comfortable being at Neverland. These kids knew all the security passwords to every room you could imagine, even the rooms that were, blocked off to anyone else that were personal to Michael. The last time that I actually saw them, I left them at Neverland. I spent the night and then I left. They actually asked to sleep in Michael's room. However, Michael was not there, and so one of his employees said that he could not allow them or anyone into the room while Michael was not there, but they insisted and they really wanted to. And when I thought of what the accuser was saying Michael did, I thought to myself, what child would want to go into the room where these awful things were happening to them? According to the timeline, it was after these things had already been happening to him. I felt betrayed by this family. I felt like they had taken someone who had really come to them in their darkest hour and who had really tried to be a friend, who had tried to show them support, that they were not getting from their parents or from other family or whoever. And he tried to do so much for them. And they told me that Michael was the one who helped cure this child of cancer, just his love and his support, and that they were able, the same people who were able to say that they were capable of then turning their backs on him and making these just awful allegations for the sake of money or whatever it was just, I just felt really betrayed. I think that they feel like Michael should have done more for them.
Financially?
Financially, specifically after the Martin Bashir documentary aired, and this child is basically thrust into the public spotlight. They should have been compensated.
In 2005, right before the start of the trial, there was a leak of the grand jury transcripts, which found its way to the media. ABC's Primetime Live and thesmokinggun.com reported on the 1900 pages of the transcripts, while they should have been state sealed. Needless to say, Tom Mesereau, Michael's lawyer, was not amused. Michael was allowed by the judge to react to this, even while there was a gag order in place.
In the last few weeks, a large amount of ugly, malicious information has been released into the media about me. Apparently, this information was leaked through transcripts in a grand jury proceeding, where neither my lawyers nor I ever appeared. The information is disgusting and false. Years ago, I allowed a family to visit and spend some time at Neverland. Neverland is my home. I allowed this family into my home because they told me their son was ill with cancer and needed my help. Through the years, I have helped thousands of children who are ill or in distress. These events have caused a nightmare for my family, my children, and me. I never intend to place myself in so vulnerable a position ever again. I love my community, and I have great faith in our justice system. Please keep an open mind and let me have my day in court. I deserve a fair trial like every other American citizen. I will be acquitted and vindicated when the truth is told. Thank you.
It's never before reported detail like this that SmokingGun.com's Bill Bastone says he uncovered when reviewing police statements, grand jury testimony, and search warrant affidavits in the Jackson case.
What they do is they kind of provide, finally, a roadmap to the case. His older brother's nickname that Mr. Jackson gave him was Doo-Doo Head. And the younger brother said that he was known as Blowhole.
The nickname Blowhole was referring to the child being obese. Nothing sexual. Like the names Applehead and Rubberhead, they were nicknames the kids gave each other sometimes. Emmanuel Lewis is responsible for the Rubberhead nickname, not Michael. So how did Michael meet the Arvizos in the first place?
Very innocent and beautiful relationship, which everyone has spun it out of control.
Michael met Gavin through Chris Tucker, who worked on the movie Rush Hour at the time. The Arvizo family had been invited by Tucker to the set of the movie.
So I was at the comedy store one night, not the comedy store, but the Laugh Factory. And his father came up to me again. He said, tomorrow night is the benefit, and the kid's named Gavin. He said, he met me, he said, hey Chris, how you doing? Thanks for coming. And he said, I know Michael Jackson. I was like, yeah, right, yeah, okay. Then I come to find out later, he really did know Michael Jackson. He always used to talk about how he went to Neverland. I'm like, when you gonna take me? We was filming the scene, me and Jackie. Gavin runs on the set in the middle of the set, and he comes and he says, Michael Jackson wants to speak to you on the phone. I said, what? And Michael was on the phone, and Michael said, I love your work, and I want to meet you. I was like, I want to meet you too. So we finally hooked up. He said, you come to New York, because he was working on his album. He said, you come to New York, we hook up, and so we finally met, and now it's all because of this kid, Gavin, and he's doing well now. He was, Michael was with him when he was doing chemotherapy and all that stuff, so now he's doing well. He doesn't have cancer anymore.
Chris Tucker had interacted with this family on numerous occasions. He felt they took him for a ride. I remember him telling me when I first met him that he was told this child had cancer. He wanted to help them out. He invited them to the set in Las Vegas of Rush Hour 1. He thought they would spend a day, and they ended up spending, I think it was 10 days or 2 weeks, and billing him for the entire amount. And he went to Michael Jackson in Florida and said, be careful, something's wrong.
After repeated stays at Neverland, even while Michael was out of town, they began to exhibit an attitude of entitlement with Michael's staff and resources. Witnesses at the trial reported that they thought the family started conspiring to take advantage of Michael and his generosity. They had access to all parts of the property and freely used the amusement park, the zoo, the arcade, and movie theater. The kids figured out the Neverland security codes and were admonished by the staff for breaking into Michael's wine cellar and consuming alcohol. Eventually, the Arvizos got too out of control, and Michael started to distance himself from them. By this point, they were charging thousands of dollars of luxuries on Michael's account.
This family began to come up with these allegations of molestation and conspiracy only when they realized that they were on the way out.
The Arvizos also had Michael's drivers chauffeur them around in Michael's Rolls Royce as they went on shopping trips and traveled back and forth between their East LA home and Neverland. They claim Michael Jackson held them captive at Neverland. However, during the time they were supposedly held captive, trial records show that Janet Arvizo took regular trips on Michael's tab to local beauty salons. As these images show, Neverland is hardly an inescapable fortress. In fact, there are no secure fences around the large estate, only these split-rail fences that can be easily breached.
A quick history of Neverland. Its original name was Neverland Ranch, when William Bone purchased it in 1997 from a banker, Robert Easton. Neverland Ranch was once part of the 48,000-acre La Laguna Rancho land grant awarded to an Octavio Gutierrez of Santa Barbara during Mexican rule in California. Bone renamed it Sycamore Valley Ranch and moved his family into the property's modest old ranch house. It took him 2 years working with architect Robert Altafers to get the design to his liking. I achieved here all the things I wanted to do in my business, but couldn't, Bone would later say. Michael bought the 2,700-acre ranch in 1987, according to the contract, for $30 million, and then spent millions more to develop it as a child's fantasy land, which he fittingly gave the name Neverland, after the Peter Pan story. There have been several reports about the purchase price, but I'll go with what the contract says. Michael added 3 railroads, a petting zoo and a full amusement park with 9 major rides and an arcade. He also put in an electric railroad with 100 feet of track behind the house for his own children. When the estate was sold to Michael, the furnishing was included. He kept the interior as it was. In 1993, the build started to create the famous train station, based on Disney's train station at Disneyland. Michael named it Catherine Station, after his mother, as he also did with the Catherine steam engine and Catherine Street. In 2019, James Safechuck claimed in the film Leaving Neverland that he had been molested by Michael at that train station. He said under oath that the abuse happened between 1988 and 1992. Problem with that statement is that the train station, whose construction started in late 1993, wasn't even built until 1994. So it's safe to say this was a blatant lie. As Michael stated, and also what we heard from Ajay prior, Michael allowed the Arvizos at Neverland because he wanted Gavin to have a place to heal. Many children over the years have been recovering at Neverland, although this was not well known to the main public. Michael even built special recovery rooms for bedridden and sometimes terminally ill children in his movie theater, so they could watch from their beds through the windows of these rooms. When I did research into the history of Neverland, I came across some shocking facts and names of the people involved. In the next part of this video you will see the ever-tangled web that was wrapped around Neverland, as was the case with many aspects in Michael Jackson's life. Many names came up in my research. The most important ones were Tom Barrack, Sig Rogich, Philip Anschutz, Dr. Tomei Tomei and James Weller. All connected to Michael, all connected to Neverland and all connected to each other. James Weller is the owner of the advertising company that created the commercial for the This Is It tour. Sig Rogich was one of his partners apparently, and so was Tomei Tomei at the time, hence the name TRW, Tomei Rogich Weller. According to Randall Sullivan's book, Weller and Tomei were partners in TRW since 2005, but it was actually since 2004. I don't know how they came to be partners, but right after Michael passed away, this partnership was over. The TRW website stayed up until 2011, and in 2013 the domain name expired. It wasn't actually until last year that I found the letters were altered. It's now, and may always have been, JRW, which stands for James R. Weller. James Weller, now 81 and 69 in 2009, was mentioned in the lawsuit that Julian's auction house filed against MJJ Productions. Julian's owner claimed that he was threatened by Weller after he didn't want to postpone an auction which had Neverland's memorabilia up for sale. Weller, who spoke on behalf of Tomei and Michael, said to Julian's their lives would be in danger from the Nation of Islam, who did all the security for Michael at the time. It's weird that Weller, a respected veteran of the advertising industry, would even do such a thing. This lawsuit came after Julian's was sued by MJJ Productions to postpone the auction and stop the sale. According to Julian's, the sale had been planned since 2008, and it was Tomei who made that decision to sell all Neverland's items. When Michael found out, he wanted Tomei to stop the auction. The lawsuit against Julian's was filed one day before Michael's speech at the O2, his announcement of the This Is It tour.
They called us while we were working on the Bob Hope project to ask us if we would be interested in selling some items for Michael Jackson. And of course, that's an opportunity that doesn't come about very often. So we were very keen to at least to participate and bid for the project. And the very next day, we were walking Neverland. On the first day that we were announcing the press call with the first of the World Tour exhibition when we were in Ireland, and our press call was on March 5th, we read an email that morning to say that there was a lawsuit filed by MJJ Productions on Michael Jackson. And that was devastating to us because we had such great pride in this project. And to think that they filed a lawsuit to think that there was some misunderstanding that we were not an auction house. We are Julian's Auctions. So it sort of turned out that we're familiar with barbarians at the gate, we became the barbarians with the gate.
We still to this day don't know what it's all about. We've asked, what items, if there's some that you wanted back, because we were given everything to sell at auction, and nobody's communicated that to us. So, we have a valid binding contract, and we just hope that Michael will embrace this as he did when we first started the project. And I think when he sees what we've created here and the exhibition and the quality and everything, I think he'll, hopefully come around.
Let's go back to some of the other names I mentioned in the beginning of this video and show you more of my research from long ago and what I discovered recently while I was making this video. Colony Capital, owned by Tom Barrack, was a client of TRW, the company in which Tomei and James Weller were partners. Sig Rogic, born in Iceland, is the president of the Rogic Communications Group. He also founded R&R Advertising, Nevada's largest advertising and marketing firm. His clients included Frank Sinatra, Donald Trump and Mike Tyson. He's a very big name in the world of advertising and worked with several American presidents. He became best friends with President Bush Sr. Rogic and Weller had worked together on the Ronald Reagan campaign in 1984. They were part of the so-called Tuesday Team. Along with Hal Riney, they successfully managed to positively turn Reagan's image around. It was the most successful campaign ever. Reagan carried 49 states in 1984. It was the same year Reverend Jesse Jackson was a presidential candidate. It was also the year that Michael visited the White House and met with Ronald Reagan himself. Did the former members of the Tuesday Team use the Reagan campaign as a blueprint for the This Is It campaign? Were they worried Michael's image needed a positive change as well, after the 2005 trial and all the negative media?
This is it. The King of Pop. Live at the O2. 10 shows. Starts July 8th. Visit michaeljacksonlive.com. Michael Jackson.
But the Tuesday Team didn't have such a positive image themselves. In a new book called I, the People, the Tuesday Team is being described as a shrewd PR machine who was aiming mostly at white America and excluded people like women and black people. They were not scared of bending data to their liking and creating a white male fantasy America in order to get Reagan re-elected. The campaign was all about humanizing consumerism, where white America was equal to being wealthy. It's no surprise some of the Tuesday Team members and people involved with the Reagan administration like Tom Barrack, Doug Watts and Ed Rollins were also heavily involved with the Trump elections. Why were some of the former Tuesday Team members associated with the This Is It campaign and with Michael? And who was responsible? Although maybe brilliant in advertising, the philosophy of the Tuesday Team doesn't match what Michael stood for. Michael was all about inclusion and embracing all people all over the world. It's pretty disturbing to me these people were so entangled in the This Is It production. Somehow Weller and Rogic teamed up at TRW, which according to the website was responsible for lots of advertising campaigns over the years, but I learned all of them were mainly Weller's achievements. But there was another familiar name connected to Ronald Reagan as well, Tom Barrack. He was an undersecretary in the Department of the Interior in the 1983 Reagan administration. So chances are Weller, Rogich, and Barrack had known each other since that time. Both Rogich and Weller made a name for themselves in the advertising industry. Weller was a partner with the famous Jerry Della Femina for years. Barrack owned several ranches in the same area as Neverland is located, as did President Reagan, whose Rancho del Cielo was close by, about 15 miles from Neverland. Was Barrack after even more ranches in 2008 when he takes up the mortgage for Neverland?
Looking for a place with its own railroad line, including a Victorian train station? Michael Jackson's Neverland Valley Ranch will soon be on the market, and the sellers think it could fetch as much as $90 million. A Los Angeles real estate firm is hoping to find a buyer for the shuttered 2,600-acre estate, carnival rides and exotic animals not included. Jackson bought the property in Santa Barbara County, California for $19 million in 1987, back when he was at the peak of his fame and fortune. Over the years, he turned the place into a kind of fantasy land for a kid with an unlimited allowance. The zoo featured lions, tigers, elephants, and an alligator pond. And the amusement park included a carousel, bumper cars, and a Ferris wheel. Jackson regularly invited local school kids and other groups to frolic at his private playground. But there was a dark side. In 1993, Jackson was accused of child molestation, leading to a civil lawsuit that eventually was settled. But in 2003, authorities arrested him on charges of molesting a different child at the ranch. Jackson stood trial in 2005 in nearby Santa Maria and was acquitted. But associates said the legal ordeal took its toll, and Jackson told many in his circle he would never return to Neverland. While he traveled the globe, the estate was mothballed. The exotic animals were removed, and the staff, which once numbered 150, was reduced to fewer than 10. Early in 2008, Jackson defaulted on a $24 million loan secured by Neverland. Days before the property and its contents were to be auctioned off on the steps of a Santa Barbara courthouse on March 19, 2008, Los Angeles-based Colony Capital bought the note. Instead of foreclosing, Colony CEO Tom Barrack, a friend and business associate of Jackson's manager at the time, struck an unusual agreement with the singer. Under the arrangement, Jackson may profit from the sale of his old home, assuming Colony can sell it for enough to make its money back. Now Colony is in the process of bringing the ranch back to life and taking steps to remove the taint of scandal. It has changed the name back to Sycamore Valley Ranch, the one the original developer gave it, and has removed many of Jackson's eccentric touches. The renovations have so far cost more than $3 million. The ranch is situated on some of the most desirable real estate in California, and Colony believes it could be worth a fortune to the right buyer. But it also says it can afford to wait, possibly 3 years or more, for that buyer to emerge, and for the real estate market to stabilize. In the meantime, the once and future Neverland remains unoccupied. For the Wall Street Journal, I'm Ethan Smith in Los Angeles.
So how did Dr. Tome end up in this group of people? This is what the TLW website said about him. Dr. Tome R. Tome, Ambassador at Large, the country of Senegal. But when the Senegal embassy was asked about him, they said the following. Tome R. Tome is not an ambassador of Senegal or Senegalese officials. And there was no evidence he had ever been a real doctor or orthopedist as he claimed himself. Dr. Tome worked as a consultant for Colony Capital, but in 2008 and 2009 he also acts like Michael's manager, which seems like a conflict of interest to me. Jermaine Jackson said he met Tome in late 2007 and he asked him in April 2008 if he could help out Michael in saving Neverland from foreclosure. Tome introduced Jermaine to Tom Barrack. Tome is the one who set up an auction to sell the memorabilia of Neverland and later claimed he never did. He even had all the memorabilia sent to him instead of Michael. More about that story in another documentary I'll be making soon. In February 2009, Weller threatens the owners of Julian's auction house on behalf of Tomei to stop the auction, because Michael was horrified when he found out. MJJ Productions file a lawsuit to stop the auction, but Julian's files a countersuit since they have a contract. Eventually Michael and Julian's work things out, and they change the auction into an exhibition. Michael became so suspicious of Tomei that he hired a PI. Together with his assistant Michael Amir and lawyer Peter Lopez, he learned that Tomei had been a party in 16 civil lawsuits, many involving contractual disputes. In fact, Amir and Lopez discovered that he basically had lied about almost everything, from being friends with the rich and famous to his connections to royal families. Michael didn't act right away and wanted to wait and see what would happen. Even after Michael finally decided to fire him in May 2009, Tomei kept in touch with AEG behind Michael's back. Maybe looking back, it was never in Michael's power to fire Tomei, since he wasn't the one paying him. I think it was Tomei's job to persuade Michael to perform, to sell Neverland's items and to keep him motivated to continue with the rehearsals and the tour. After the incident threatening Julian's auction house, the website of TRW is suddenly offline. Could it be Michael at first agreed with the auction, maybe having no choice, but later changed his mind after what he found out about Tomei, after he felt AEG pressured him too much to perform 50 shows in 2009?
At a time when Michael Jackson wore masks everywhere and virtually hid from the world, there was one man who made his way in. Tomei had an all-access pass to Jackson's life.
Did Michael Jackson trust the wrong people?
A lot of times in life he did.
Frank DeLeo was Michael's longtime friend and served as his manager during the Thriller days.
He's trying to say who I can see and where I can see them, and he said, I don't like it.
He had taken over Michael's complete life.
June Gatlin was Michael's spiritual advisor.
Michael was deathly afraid of him. He was afraid of who this man is, afraid of whatever this man may or be capable of doing.
Court papers reveal Tomei's been accused of everything from fraud to making threats, and all of it, friends say, was getting too close for Michael Jackson.
Last time we spoke, you told me to check on Dr. Tomei, and I did a complete checking.
In September 2008, with Michael's permission, she taped one of their phone sessions. In this exclusive recording never heard before, Michael launches into his fears about his top advisor, Tomei.
This guy, he just has ways about him that looks like see what he's done. There's this divide between me and my representatives, and I don't talk to my lawyer, my accountants. I talk to him, and he talks to them.
That's not good.
I know it's not good. I don't like it. And I want to get somebody in there with him that I know and trust. I don't know what's in my accounts. I don't know.
Oh, that's not good, Michael.
I know that's not good.
I don't like him. I don't trust him. He's mean. He's trying to keep me and separate me from everything and everybody I love. We cannot allow somebody to just be in total control of your life.
I totally agree with that. That's why I'm calling you.
So how did a complete stranger get so close to the world's most famous performer?
In the early days when I met with Michael, I was taking care of everything. When I came to Michael's life, I was the only one there. I remember that Michael Jackson has the biggest heart of any person I ever met. I love Michael Jackson, and I'm gonna miss him.
But behind the scenes, Tomei was plagued with problems. NBC News has obtained hundreds of pages of court documents from the 1990s detailing allegations of fraudulent real estate loans against Tomei. He resolved the suits before they went to trial without ever admitting any liability. He goes by Dr. Tomei, but he isn't licensed to practice medicine in any of the states he's lived in.
How much control did Tomei have over Michael Jackson's finances?
He had pretty much complete control.
In what way?
He had checking accounts. He was having money put into the accounts. He was signing checks.
He was signing checks for Michael Jackson?
Yeah.
And Michael allowed that?
He gave him the power to do it.
Michael's personal possessions were up for auction, and Tomei got into a dispute with the auctioneers. The auctioneer said Tomei's people actually threatened their lives. Tomei denies ever telling anyone to say that, but it was enough for Michael Jackson to sever ties with the man who ran his life.
He said, I don't speak to Tomei. I don't want to deal with Tomei. What do we do from here? I have to write him a letter.
But friends say Tomei didn't take the hint.
I'm still in charge of Michael's Jackson's business. Till otherwise I am informed not to do so.
Was Michael trying to change his life around at the end?
He wasn't trying. Michael was not trying to change his life. Michael was changing his life.
While he refused to speak on camera, Tomei told us off camera the truth about everything will come out.
Let's go back in time a few years, 1987. Michael bought the property from William Bone, and according to the contract, Michael paid $30 million. William Bone owned Neverland under its former name Sycamore Valley Ranch. He's also founder of Sunrise Company. Now here comes another link I didn't see coming. In 1997, Sunrise Company formed a partnership with none other than Colony Capital. This partnership was called Sunrise Colony Company. The property of Neverland seemed perfect for the business goals of Sunrise Colony Company, but it seems to me that Colony Capital could also benefit from owning Neverland Ranch. That is, if they eventually would own Neverland completely.
In a world full of superlatives, what do you say when you really do have something extraordinary? This is Sunrise Company. For more than 30 years, Sunrise Company has set a precedent by creating private country club communities that remain unrivaled. Each an impressive creation unto itself, yet all similar in their embrace of nature and unsurpassed style. It takes an extraordinary team to bring this vision to life. Founder and CEO William Bone has created a company that reflects his personal integrity and devotion to excellence. This is Sunrise Company. For over 30 years, builder of America's finest country club communities.
Now in his career, Tom Barrack had invested a lot in casinos, gaming and real estate, like ranches. Someone else who had also been doing that was the owner of AEG, Philip Anschutz. One of his ranches, the Eagle's Nest, was part of a controversy back in 2005 and 2006. And that story had everything to do with the O2 Arena. The O2, or Millennium Dome, as it was called originally, was completed in 1999 to be part of the Millennium Experience, but the project wasn't that successful. John Prescott, the Deputy Prime Minister, visited Anschutz on his ranch, Eagle's Nest, because he had a problem. This is what was said on the Education Forum. We now know why the Labour Party all of a sudden became very keen in 2003 to allow the building of 70 casinos, including super casinos in the UK. At the time, the Labour government was having great difficulty selling off the Millennium Dome. John Prescott stepped in to do a deal with American billionaire Philip Anschutz. This was a surprise, as several businessmen had looked into the possibility of redeveloping the site, but claimed it could not be turned into a profitable venture. Anschutz came to the same conclusion, but calculated that it could become profitable if he could get permission to build a super casino next to the proposed sports and entertainment arena. It was discovered that Prescott had 7 private meetings with Anschutz between August 2002 and July 2005. Having the big comeback tour by Michael Jackson would certainly be good for the image and revenue of the O2, and would also gain them a lot of money. Philip Anschutz became interested in gambling through one of his business associates named Sol Kurtzner, who made his fortune with the famous South African resort Sun City. What many people don't know is that Michael had a 27% stake in Sun International, which Sun City is a part of. Michael got interested after visiting South Africa and Nelson Mandela. He actually became good friends with Sol Kurtzner. Kurtzner invested in the Millennium Dome, but only if he also would get a gambling license in return. He actually teamed up with Philip Anschutz of AEG. See, the dome was on the brink of being closed, and Prescott was trying to find a buyer, Anschutz. And Anschutz wanted to turn the dome into a sports and entertainment arena, and claimed it would only be profitable if he could get a permission to build a super casino. And that's where Kurtzner came in as a business partner. But then this happened. Kurtzner's son Howard died in a helicopter crash in 2006. He was the one doing business with or for his father for the casino. This was of course impacting business a lot, since Howard was the CEO. And then 1 year later, the Dome lost their chance of the gambling license for the resurrection of the place, and without it, it would probably not be profitable. But AEG still wanted to continue with their investments. May 31st, 2005, the official name of the Dome changed into the O2 Arena, and on June 24th, 2007, the O2 opens as the entertainment center it is today, with a concert by Bon Jovi. So what could they do to make money with the Dome? In 2006, Randy Phillips of AEG approached Michael Jackson for a comeback tour.
I said, Michael, listen, if you wanted to control your own destiny, you have to go back to work because you need to make money.
On the public on sale at 50 shows, there were enough people. There were over, I think, 225 to 240,000 people still queued up on Ticketmaster, and the ticketing agencies were selling tickets. So we probably could have done 200 shows. We would have netted probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 or $60 million for that run.
Next to Tom Barrack, Sig Rogich and Weller being connected to the Reagan administration, someone else in the story also donated lots of money to the Reagan campaign. It was Philip Anschutz, who was listed under business in the Reagan-Bush organization in 1984. Rogich and Anschutz would also be mentioned in the next Republican organizations. I think it's not hard to see how all these people were also connected to Michael's comeback in 2009. They were already connected before that ever happened. But there's even more to the story. When Sig Rogich's sister dies, I learned from the obituary that he has a brother, Ed Rogich. He is the vice president of the biggest slot machine manufacturer in the world, named IGT, International Game Technology. And Tom Barrack's station casinos had an exclusive contract with IGT. It turns out the presidential campaigns received a lot of money from the casino gaming industry. And look at the bio of the president of the American Gaming Association. He too was part of the Reagan administration in 1983. While Tom Barrack was the former director of the American Gaming Association. And there's someone else in Michael's inner circle that had strong ties with the White House, Ramon Bain, Michael's spokesperson and manager for years. She was very young when she started working for President Jimmy Carter and was part of the transition team when President Reagan started in 1980. She also worked with the Clinton and Obama administration. And the Reagan connection doesn't stop there. One more person that was part of the Tuesday team. It was the president of the advertising company who oversaw the infamous Pepsi commercial, where Michael got severely burned, which would affect him the rest of his life. Like Rogich and Weller, Dusenberry was a very successful person in the advertising industry. Philip Dusenberry even named his book after that incident, although the name later was changed.
More of Michael Jackson extolling the virtues of a soft drink he reportedly doesn't drink. And what's the news in the news conference? That the 27-year-old performer has just signed the world's largest endorsement contract.
Michael, it gives me great pleasure to present you with this certificate on behalf of the Guinness Book of Records for achieving the greatest commercial product endorsement in history.
What's the explanation for the expenditure of such extraordinary sums for endorsements?
The sky's the limit. There is no limit. As long as they know that they can build their brand and they can make money by using these stars, they're going to offer more and more and more.
Avocados, cilantro mixed with your choice of beans, chicken, beef or pork.
Welcome to the Cafe 80s, where it's always morning in America, even in the afternoon.
The connection between all these people and the link to the Reagan administration and the Tuesday team is insane. And still, this is not the end. Remember this? In 2008, Patrick Alaka of Algood Entertainment thought he had locked in the Jacksons for an exclusive performance. The concert would be in or around July of 2009. But he didn't know Michael was in negotiation with AEG to do the O2 concerts. Apparently Alaka had a deal with Frank DeLeo, who wasn't Michael's manager at the time, and he even approached Michael's parents and Debbie Rowe for support. The contract Alaka had with DeLeo mentioned that Michael couldn't perform for anyone else in a certain time period. But in the end, Michael went with AEG, and Alaka filed a lawsuit shortly before Michael died. Michael said he had never any knowledge about the contract Alaka had with DeLeo.
Was it your opinion that Michael Jackson was ever physically able to conduct those concerts in London?
No, we never felt that he would be able to make more than a couple shows in London, if any of the shows in London, which is why our deal was so tailored for Michael.
Patrick Alaka is a New Jersey-based concert promoter who spent the last 10 months trying to book Michael Jackson for a one-night gig. His negotiations with Jackson insiders gave him a ringside seat to the pop star's physical, mental, and financial state leading up to the ill-fated London concert series and ultimately Michael's death. In your dealings, you were exposed to different people around Michael, including his then financial advisor, Dr. Tomei Tomei. Tell me about his relationship with Michael. Did he know that Michael was having problems getting prepared for any concert?
Yes, everyone around the inner circle of Michael knew that there were difficulties, there were missed rehearsals, there was erratic behavior on the part of Michael in terms of his dedication to the project.
According to Alaka, as he attempted to push his own project, he became aware that Jackson's inner circle, namely Dr. Tomei Tomei, was well aware of Jackson's addiction to drugs and his deteriorating health.
Dr. Tomei intimated to me and told, yes, that there was an understood problem with drugs. Dr. Tomei told us flat out that he didn't feel Michael would make one date in London. I overheard Michael Jackson telling Leonard Rowe that he only committed to 10 shows in London.
Alaka feels Michael was pushed into the London concert series by businessmen trying to exploit Jackson's well-publicized money troubles.
Dr. Tomei was charged with one thing, and that's to bring money into Colony Capital, to recover that debt that they had on Neverland. And Dr. Tomei used AEG as one of the tools to do that. And that was, they had at one point told me it was a $500 million 3-year project. That's a tremendous amount of money at stake, and I think money corrupts, and I think you see the end result of greed.
Looking into Alaco's history, I was amazed to find the following. He too was part of the Tuesday team for President Reagan in 1983, as an 18-year-old at the time. Is this all one big coincidence? One explanation could be that Tom Barrack asked all his old connections to team up to polish Michael's image so the This Is It concerts would sell and they would make the money they wanted. Apparently they didn't have faith Michael would still sell tickets after the trial in 2005, but he did.
Well, Fortune magazine is suggesting that tour could have netted Jackson more than $400 million. 750,000 tickets for 50 shows. They were sold in 5 hours.
It's still a bit of a mystery where Dr. Tomei came in. We know him and Barrack both have a Lebanese background, and Barrack still does business there. But Tomei was already a partner in TLW since 2004. That makes a story which I consider the rumor way more likely to me. I read on a blog that Tomei already knew Jermaine Jackson back in 2004 and was involved with moving Michael to Bahrain. If this is true, then lots of people have been lying. But it does make sense of a lot of things. It's true that Jermaine had strong ties with Sheikh Abdullah before Michael moved there. Jermaine was the one initially who planned a charity song with the Sheikh, not Michael. It was also Jermaine who founded the Two Seas company with Sheikh Abdullah, not Michael. And it was not just Michael the Sheikh spent his money on. He also paid for Jermaine and gifted him things like a car. What happened that it was eventually Michael who got sued? And what happened to the collaboration between Jermaine and Abdullah? We do know it was Jermaine who introduced Tomei to Michael. If Tomei was already in contact with Colony Capital, which I think he was, it would not have been hard to get to Michael through Jermaine. This way Colony Capital could already position themselves exactly where they wanted to be.
But his beloved Neverland, what did it look like at that point?
It didn't look like Neverland. The grass is dying, the pond was filthy and dirty, there was no water running. I mean, it was really run down.
2 years ago, Michael Jackson faced foreclosure. He could not make the balloon payment on his once beloved Neverland.
It will be very embarrassing for Michael Jackson to lose his home in foreclosure.
Dr. Tomei, a very private businessman, was brought in by Jermaine Jackson at the last minute to help save the ranch and all of Jackson's personal property inside from foreclosure. There've been 14 days left to pay how much money?
$23 million plus.
And how much did he have in the bank?
He didn't have anything close to that number.
Tomei put together an 11th-hour deal with an investment firm called Colony Capital to pay off the loan. So Michael and his advisors turned to his other debts and making a future for his kids.
Colony already had business ties to William Bone, the former owner of Neverland Ranch. They had a connection to Fortress and to AEG, and were friendly with Sheikh Abdullah of Bahrain. And that brings us to yet another person linked to these men. Sunrise Colony does business as Red Rock Country Club, and guess who owns a house there?
Warrant affidavit released this week. But it's becoming increasingly likely that Dr. Murray, who's believed to be holed up in this Las Vegas estate, will eventually face criminal charges. Not only has the coroner deemed the death a homicide, but detectives from the Los Angeles Police Department have now passed the fruits of their investigation to the district attorney, and it'll be up to that office to decide whether he faces criminal charges.
In April of 2006, Michael was renegotiating his finances and his loan with Sony, but also his deal with Fortress, who took over the loans from Bank of America in 2005. And there's a new name entering the web: Prince Al Walid.
Despite his financial troubles, Jackson will not be moonwalking into bankruptcy court, at least not for now. His financial fate now rests in the hands of a New York-based hedge fund.
Well, for several years, his album sales and live music revenue have been, way off for years from their highs in the mid-'80s, and he owns some very valuable assets, including the copyrights to 251 Beatles songs. And for several years, he's been living off a package of loans worth about $270 million total. Bank of America, which held the loans for many years, abruptly sold them at the beginning of May to an outfit called Fortress Investment Group, a New York-based. It's a hedge fund and it's a big financial operation that has a bunch of different investments. And one of the things they do is invest in distressed debt, such as Mr. Jackson's debts. So they now
This is distressed debt in a distressed person at a distressed time. This is a heck of an investment. I guess what they hope to get is the music catalog, right?
Well, that's not clear. They first of all, they bought the loans at what's called par. There was no discount for the risk involved, and in fact, they extended the loans had been due this coming December, which a lot of people around Jackson felt, was indicated an imminent crunch or crisis for him. They appear to have extended the term of the loans and possibly extended him a bigger loan, which Michael Jackson is surrounded by all kinds of advisors who have all kinds of opinions that conflict with each other. Some of them feel this means he's completely out of the woods. Others, we're told, feel that this just means he's delayed the inevitable, and when the boom comes down, it's going to come down that much harder.
Wouldn't that say that the loans are well collateralized, and maybe that's the reason that you would buy them at par, because the underlying collateral is probably worth more than the loan amount?
That's right. The loans are indeed very well collateralized. The Sony ATV Music Publishing, which is the catalog that owns the Beatles copyrights, is valued. His share of it is valued at over $500 million.
That's where Fortress wants to score. Right there. Right.
It's not strange thinking Fortress was also after Michael's half of the ATV catalog. They had financed an organization called the Songwriters Collective, and it was in support of songwriters getting money for their work. TSC was founded by Bud Carr and Gene Mason. Carr was also the manager of the band Kansas and involved in numerous Hollywood films. What's more interesting is that they were working together with UCC Capital and Fortress. UCC Capital used to be led by Charles Koppelman until co-founder Robert DeLorean bought him out. It was now DeLorean who was involved with Fortress, UCC and TSC. Fortress and TSC would hold the catalogs of the songwriters sort of hostage until they would pay back their loans to Fortress. But in doing so, the catalogs lost value. They promised the artists they would eventually be partners at TSC, so it seems if the songwriters weren't able to pay back what they owed, Fortress, UCC and TSC would end up owning the catalogs. I will try to explain some of Michael's financial history as how I understand from all that I've read it went down. In 1993, Michael called his former lawyer John Branca after 3 years, asking if he should sell his ATV catalog for $75 million. Branca had been replaced by lawyers provided by David Gavin. Michael needed the money after the settlement with the Chandlers, his suspended world tour and his dependency on prescription drugs. Branca agreed to help him out against 5% of the ATV catalog, and Michael agreed. With Michael's financial problems continuing, Branca proposed to merge with Sony. Sony saw it as a first step of owning the complete ATV catalog, as they always wanted. It seemed a good solution to Michael's financial problems, but they only became worse. In 2003, he owed Bank of America $270 million, and both his catalogs were at stake, the ATV catalog and the MyJack. Michael became more and more suspicious of Branca now owning the 5%, and he fired him in 2003. However, Branca is still involved with Michael's business affairs until at least 2006, but maybe that was because of his connection to Sony. Frank D'Elia would state after Michael's death that he was also on the board of Sony, just as Dr. Tomei Tomei had been. No financial deal with another bank would come about, and between 2003 and 2005 it seems it were Charles Koppelman, Al Melnick, John Branca and apparently the Nation of Islam who were Michael's business advisors. After the trial, Michael moved to Bahrain, and that's when Sheikh Abdullah took care of most of the financial problems. Michael struck a deal with the Sheikh where he would record 2 albums and write an autobiography, to name 2 things. But in 2005, Fortress bought Michael's loans from Bank of America after he missed some payments. Then Fortress started to put a high interest in place, which made Michael's debts even higher. At the end of 2005, Fortress threatened to call the loans because of Michael's late or missed payments. Sony stepped up, probably because they were worried that Michael would lose his half of the ATV catalog. Sony was happy with Michael as a partner, since they knew him very well, and they were terrified they had to deal with an unfamiliar partner. Sony brought in Citigroup to try and buy the loans from Fortress, offering Michael a deal with a very low interest. Sony would however get the right to buy 25% of Michael's half of the catalog. Then suddenly Fortress offered Michael the same, and he decided to stay with Fortress, probably because he didn't want to risk Sony buying the 25% part of his half of the ATV catalog. Citigroup did provide the $25 million mortgage on Neverland, and Michael used that money to buy back the 5% stake that John Branca once got. All of this is testimony to me of how bad Michael wanted to keep the ATV catalog and Neverland. Now Citigroup's largest shareholder was Prince Al-Walid bin Talal. Al-Walid is a grandson of Abdulaziz, the first king of Saudi Arabia, and of Riyad al-Sal, Lebanon's first prime minister. Michael met Al-Walid in 1995 in Euro Disney, and they entered a partnership in creating family entertainment in 1996, called Kingdom Entertainment. But the prince wanted more than just that. He also wanted to manage Michael and release music with him. So in 1997 they entered a joint venture along with Sony to focus on MJJ Music. Kingdom Entertainment produced the History Tour, and Al-Walid's associate Tarak Ben Ammar was responsible for Michael's management, under the name Quinta Communications. Tour executive at the time was Paul Kangaware, who would later work for AEG. For some reason, the whole partnership and the other business deals never came to fruition. What's interesting is that Prince Al-Walid also grew up in Lebanon, just as Tom Barrack did. And what's even more interesting is that he is doing business with Colony Capital. Al-Walid joined Colony Capital in 2006 to put their chain of hotels together to form Fairmont Raffles Holding. Today the Swiss Hotel has also been added. And Al-Walid is also related to Sheikh Abdullah of Bahrain, with whom Michael stayed after the trial in 2005. Now, before the Bank of America sale of the loans, Michael was offered a deal through Al Melnick and Charles Koppelman, but he refused since he didn't trust it. In that deal, Michael would sell half of his ATV catalog, so he would have money to pay off his loans. That's when Michael asked Ron Burkle to help him out with the Bank of America, and Burkle brought in Jesse Jackson, who called Bank of America telling them Michael got ripped off. But they were not amused. They were so offended that they sold the loans to Fortress, although I also read it was Burkle who upset the CEO of Bank of America. During these years, Randy Jackson also tried to help Michael financially by offering him a deal with Prescient Acquisitions. Prescient would find someone to buy out the loans from Bank of America. They were responsible for bringing in Fortress, actually. Now it was said that Fortress would offer $537 million to Michael to buy out Bank of America and to buy the other half of the ATV catalog back from Sony. And Prescient would get 9% if this would happen. But Sony didn't have to sell their half just because Michael now had the money. So Fortress, who obviously had gotten bad information, only bought the $270 million loan from Bank of America. Randy brought in a man called Don Stabler, who was an accountant, and he claimed Michael signed an agreement to hire Prescient. But Michael said he didn't remember signing any agreement, or that if he had been pressured and tricked into signing this deal. Michael was furious with Randy and then called in the help of Ron Burkle, who was close to President Clinton. And as I said before, Burkle asked Jesse Jackson to help out. Prescient, however, still wanted their 9% and sued Michael. This lawsuit would drag on until 2007. In March of 2006, Michael had to close the doors of Neverland Ranch for good. Interesting thing is that Prescient didn't even exist until 2005. The man running it was Darian Dash, whose stepfather, Cecil Holmes, was an executive at Casablanca Records. And guess who was head of Casablanca Records in 2005? It was Tommy Mottola, the former executive at Sony's, whom Michael had called the devil in 2002. So Ron Burkle, Jesse Jackson, but also Al Melnick were involved in helping Michael with the refinancing of his loans in 2005. In 2006, it seems it was mainly Sheikh Abdullah who helped with all the financial dealings in return for a deal. But Michael wasn't happy with the deal he had with Abdullah. He had also been in talks with a company in Bahrain called AAJ Holdings. They wanted Michael as an advisor about theme parks and other entertainment. One of their projects was the Blue City in Oman. But then, in the middle of 2006, Michael moved to Ireland and never returned to Bahrain. But the Blue City project, or at least the people involved, would turn up again in 2009. In the beginning of 2006, Michael met with Ahmed Janahi of AAJ Holdings. He wanted Michael to be a consultant to his entertainment projects for the Gulf region, along with the Two Seas project with Prince Abdullah, and this one, Michael would be able to gain a lot of money. In Oman, AAJ Holdings was busy creating the Blue City, a giant tourist complex. One of the other investors was called Cyclone. They had a 30% share in the project. But then Janahi was bullied off the project by Cyclone, and they ended up with a 100% share in the project. Cyclone didn't want to share the profits with AAJ Holdings, apparently. The media even suggested it was also because of Janahi's involvement with Michael that he was chased away. But that doesn't seem likely, since one of the key people at Cyclone is someone who met Michael and who was friendly with him. His name is Anis Issa Al-Sajali, who has a long list of titles like being the founder of Gulf Navigation Holding, chairman of various local companies, and he's also an honorary consul of Lithuania. Fast forward to 2009, Dr. Tomei writes an email to Randy Phillips of AEG, and one of the names mentioned is Sam Nazarian. Nazarian is the founder of SBE, Sammy Boy Entertainment, which describes themselves as a luxury hospitality, real estate development and lifestyle company. SBE with Nazarian is closely connected to AEG, and Nazarian is a good friend of Tim Lewick, the former CEO and president of AEG Live. But there are more notable connections to Michael. None other than Tom Barrack of Colony Capital is on the board of SBE. And Nazarian's partner in SBE with a 50% share is Ron Burkle. That's a lot of familiar names. Then another name is mentioned in the email conversation. It is Anis Issa. How come his name is popping up in Randy Phillips' email 3 years after Michael left Bahrain? What is the connection? Could it be they were talking about the Blue City projects? After all, it would be very lucrative for AEG and SBE to invest in that. And Tomei has connections to Oman. And then we have the circle complete. The email that Phillips sends back is even more confusing. Which Lionel is he talking about? Could it be Lionel Richie, since Phillips was his manager at the time? Phillips was also the president of the We Are the World Foundation. And why would Tomei even have the passports of Michael's children, especially since Michael fired him a month earlier? And let's not even mention the fact Phillips is either mistaken or confused about when the first show was supposed to happen. It was not 20 days from June 17th, which would mean July 7th. At the time of this email, the first dates had already been postponed to July 13th. And here comes another weird connection. Phillips sent another email. This one was sent to Richard Nanula, who negotiated with AEG on behalf of Colony Capital about Michael's deal. From the email we can tell Phillips was told Tomei had a long-standing relationship with Michael, which doesn't match with what Jermaine had said. Nanula joined Colony in 2008 and helped them buy Miramax from Disney. Interesting thing is that Nanula had worked for Disney in the past, and in 1995 he negotiated for them with Prince Al-Walid, who helped out saving Euro Disney from foreclosure. Nanula was one of the most promising young executives, but in 2013 he had to resign from Colony and Miramax due to a sex scandal. Michael always said he never wanted to sell the ATV catalog. To me it seems he also didn't want to sell Neverland, even though he said he never wanted to return. I think he entered the This Is It shows trying to keep his assets. It seems over the years all these people caught up in the web were after Michael's half of the ATV catalog, while Michael was trying to buy Sony's half to gain complete control over the catalog again. In 2007, Fortress threatened to foreclose on Neverland, but Michael's new attorney, London Macmillan, reassured the media this wouldn't happen, and they were working on the financing. This is when Dr. Tomei entered the web. Jermaine had asked him to help out. Tomei had a connection to Colony Capital, who had a connection to Fortress and to AEG. So in 2008, Michael entered a deal with Colony Capital to save Neverland. In return, he would enter a deal with AEG to do a number of shows in London in 2009. But in 2007 Michael got sued by Sheikh Abdullah, who felt betrayed after Michael left Bahrain, never holding up his end of the contract they supposedly signed. The Bahraini Sheikh settled the lawsuit and AEG paid part of the settlement, which gave them even more leverage to make sure Michael would respect their contract. Of course, AEG didn't do this because of charity, but because otherwise Michael couldn't enter a contract with them. Now Michael had to earn back the $5 million AEG paid in advance. Although if it's true that it was Barak who bought out the rights for AEG, the rights Michael signed to Sheikh Abdullah, Colony had a hold on not just Michael but also AEG. It seems they could not only gain control over Neverland, but also the ATV catalog and use it as leverage to get Michael on stage. But there's a twist to this story. First of all, Holmes' company God Records is a sub-label of Sony. It was also reported Michael left after he had a dispute with Holmes. Michael was planning to record his comeback album with his own newly founded company called The Michael Jackson Company Inc. and left 2Cs. According to Guy Holmes, who would manage Michael at 2C's Records, the contract was never signed since it didn't exist. In fact, Holmes said in his testimony in 2008 the whole company didn't exist. So maybe it was Michael who got betrayed, not the other way around. But because Michael signed away all the rights to his music, his touring, etc., he had to agree on a settlement with Sheikh Abdullah, although it was said Michael would have won this lawsuit.
Michael Jackson will not face a media circus at the High Court in London today. The 50-year-old had been called to testify against an Arab sheikh who was suing him for £4.7 million, but they've reached an out-of-court settlement at the 11th hour. This all started just after Michael Jackson was acquitted of child sex abuse charges during the so-called celebrity trial of the century in California 3 years ago. The beleaguered pop star, understood to have lost a considerable chunk of his fortune, made friends with the King of Bahrain's son, Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa, and took his children and entourage to stay with him. During his stay, a recording studio was built for Jackson, which the Sheikh insists he believed would be used to record comeback albums and devise a tour. He also paid Jackson's legal costs after the trial and made payments on the singer's former home, Neverland. The Sheikh says he saw this as an investment and expected to be repaid once the royalties came in. Jackson claims he believed they were gifts. He pulled out of the deal in May 2006, and the pair, once great friends, haven't seen each other since. The hearing at the High Court began last Monday. Jackson's lawyers argued that he should give evidence via video link from LA because his notoriously frail health wouldn't stand up to the journey. But doctors decided he was fit enough to travel, and he was ordered to appear before the judge today. Now the settlement's been reached, that won't happen. Wherever Michael goes, his thousands of fans follow. Whilst they'll undoubtedly be pleased to hear their hero doesn't have to face another day in court, it does mean they won't catch a glimpse of him in London.
It's very rare to see Michael in these sort of moments, in the courtroom, being a normal guy. Whenever we see him in the streets, it's always a question of fans mobbing him, and then you see him just get in and out of a car, waving. We don't see the normal guy. I just thought, let me come here, show my support, and then let me see if I've got the opportunity to go in the courtroom.
Well, I'm happy for him that he's not having to go through another court appeal thing, but obviously I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't get to see him, but I'm just happy that he's not having to go through all the drama of it all again.
The deal Michael had with Colony Capital was a joint venture, where basically Michael would pay Colony instead of Fortress. A joint venture is not a partnership, it's a deal with one single goal, in this case with an agreement to fix Neverland, restore it to its former beauty in order to sell it. But Michael would have the option of buying it back at one point. The ranch was rebranded to its former name, Sycamore Valley Ranch. And remember how Colony Capital and the former owner of Sycamore Valley Ranch, William Bone, now as Sunrise Colony Company, already had a partnership? It was said by his lawyers, for instance, that Michael still had the largest share in the joint venture. But it became clear Colony Capital had the majority. And when Michael died, Colony became the owner basically, since the loan had never been fully repaid. Michael died trying to save the things he worked so hard for. He avoided the content of Neverland being sold at auction in April 2009, as we saw in the beginning of this video. He tried to commit to the This Is It shows, even though it seemed to me he never felt 100% comfortable with doing it in the first place. At the wrongful death trial between Catherine Jackson and AEG in 2013, Randy Phillips of AEG admitted to having slapped Michael right before the press conference in March 2009. I think that says enough about their relationship. Michael said to his vocal coach Seth Riggs he didn't feel comfortable and he couldn't sleep. With the so-called help of Dr. Murray, he tried to make it to the shows in London, but we know how the story ended.
People who are interested in buying a Michael Jackson jacket, it's the same level of interest to a different kind of buyer, those who are interested in buying Michael Jackson's ranch. People said, are you going to turn it into Six Flags? Is it going to become Graceland? It'll be none of those things. It'll either be sold to an individual user or it'll have some philanthropic purpose that will carry on some of the work that Michael intended for this place to be.
The Jackson family may end up buying Neverland, but Barrick says no deals have been reached. In the meantime, Neverland plays host on occasion to some of Barrick's investors.
The Tangled web is complicated and it's full. I'm sure these aren't all the names involved with Neverland, but they are the ones I encountered in my research. To me, it seems the name Tom Barrack is the one that keeps coming back and is connected to almost everyone I mentioned. And Tom Barrack has a long-standing connection to the White House from the Nixon era to the Trump administration. It seems Barrack was close to a lot of controversial people, like Harvey Weinstein, whose Weinstein Company he wanted to save after the accusations of sexual misbehavior, or Jeffrey Epstein. In the book Fire and Fury, it was said Barrack, Epstein and Trump were a set of nightlife musketeers. We can only guess the real reasons why Barrack wanted to buy Neverland. Was he simply after more ranches? Was it about the ATV catalog, or maybe both? But we do know he has a lot of connections to other names in Michael's life. In 2021, the news came out that Barrack had been arrested. He was charged for acting like a foreign agent for the United Arab Emirates. I talked about Barrack's ties to the Saudi royal family, and in that light there's one freak connection I don't want to leave out. In 2016, Barrack set up a now-defunct pro-Trump super PAC called Rebuilding America Now, which spent $21 million to support Trump. Barrack also did business with Prince Al-Walid, who once was close with Michael, as we saw in this video. We also know Michael was once close to Princess Diana, who died in a car crash along with her then boyfriend Dodi Al-Fayed. Michael was also friends with Dodi's father. Prince Al-Walid once had a journalist working for him. His name was Jamal Khashoggi, and Jamal Khashoggi is a first cousin of Dodi Al-Fayed. Major funders to the Rebuilding America Now super PAC included Cerberus Capital Management CEO Steven Feinberg, the private equity executive whose firm trained members of an elite Saudi squad called Tier 1, who killed Jamal Khashoggi. The CIA concluded that it was the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed who was linked to the murder of Khashoggi. It's a very dark connection between Barrack, Trump and the Crown Prince, who had Prince Al-Walid arrested in 2017 when he became the Crown Prince and took over the power in Saudi Arabia. In 2015, Al-Walid openly criticized Trump for trying to get elected as president. Whatever the truth is, in the end we can safely say this is always all about money. In 2015, Colony put Neverland on the market for $100 million, but it didn't sell. No surprise, it being such an iconic place, but the fact Neverland once again came under scrutiny because of accusations of child molestation by Wade Robson and James Safechuck didn't help either. In fact, over the years, the tabloid media did everything to make Neverland seem like a dark place, while it was the opposite. Everybody who's ever been to Neverland can attest to that. It was a magical place where Michael could be himself and relive his childhood, or in fact the childhood he never had, and be safe from the always present tabloids and paparazzi. A part of Neverland that was designed after Walt Disney's famous parks was also a safe haven and a fun place for children of all parts of society. But the constant accusations that children were not safe there finally killed the spirit of the place, and Michael left in 2005 to never return. The fact Neverland had to close its doors didn't only rob Michael Jackson and his children of their home, but also robbed a lot of children and their families of the chance to spend a day of carefree fun. Even though maybe Neverland was safe from foreclosure by Colony Capital and AEG, the price that was paid was way too high in the end.
Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch has a new owner tonight. Billionaire businessman and owner of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Ron Burkle, bought the property, which sits in Los Olivos. The 2,700-acre plot of land features a massive main house, a pool house, a movie theater, dance studio, and Disney-style train station. The original asking price several years ago was $100 million, but was reduced a year later. According to the Wall Street Journal, Burkle bought Neverland Ranch for just $22 million.
In 2020 there was news that Neverland was finally sold to a familiar name, Ron Burkle, and he bought the place for just $22 million. And even though Ron was one of the people who helped Michael with his finances in 2005, we didn't know what he had planned for the ranch. We could only hope that he respected Michael enough to not tear the place down. And then in March 2021 we learned that Neverland was being restored. Even though Michael himself probably never would have wanted to return there, he most likely had a special place in his heart for the ranch and would have been thrilled to learn that in fact in this way Neverland was finally saved. In 2016 Sony bought Michael's half of the ATV catalog.
Only in death have Jackson's finances become solid. And for the first time in years, more money is coming in than is going out. But it came at too high a price.
I'm sure that's the way his children and his mother feel. All this money coming in, give me Michael.
I've been back there, but not in my bedroom. I won't live there ever again. I'll visit Neverland. It's a house now, it's not a home anymore. I'll only visit there.
I'm a nice person. I just took a shower and I washed my hair thoroughly.